Hey, welcome to AI and its practical use in business, our podcast about everything AI. I'm Bas, and this is co-founder of Salmon Lab, Koen. Hey, and it's been a while, and because we've been very busy with projects since the start of 2025. And there's really a lot happening again in the AI market. And we really needed to give you an update on the latest developments and also all the opportunities that are unlocked with these new technologies. We'll analyze the emergence of new reasoning capabilities in AI, or emergence developments, actually, particularly the developments that OpenAI released, and also one of their competitors who did it with significantly less resources. Maybe you've heard of it, the DeepSeek models, and in particularly the DeepSeek R1 models. And both of these models are really pushing the boundaries of where AI was at, and these systems can think through complex problems. And we'll also have a look at one other topic, which is called deep research, or at least that is how OpenAI released it to the public. And it's more about an autonomous research agent that can do stuff for you, but you not just enter a query and it comes back with an answer, but it goes off and it does its thing for a few minutes or even an hour, researches the whole internet to give you the best possible answer on your questions. And both OpenAI but also Perplexity have released a product based on this concept, which can be interesting to look at. So to prepare this podcast, for example, I used Perplexity's deep research assistant to help us summarize all the relevant topics for you from the last few weeks. So Koen, maybe you want to recap what happened in the last 6 weeks, apart from these two major topics that we are going to discuss. Do you have anything to add that you find interesting?
You mean besides the reasoning models and the deep research?
Yeah, and then we go into those two topics, because I think those are the two major ones, but there have been some more developments also recently.
Well, I think one interesting news fact is the report by the World Economic Forum
Yeah,
about the future of jobs report they wrote together with PwC, I think.
yeah, which we spoke about in our last podcast, right?
Was it the last podcast?
Yeah, it was our last podcast.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, that's definitely been interesting.
I still think it's an interesting topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And more on the agent side, I think Anthropic also released quite an interesting video about how to use your AI agent in the best way possible, or develop an AI agent in the best way possible, because the best practices really seem to matter in terms of how you implement such a system in correlation with the result you will be getting out of them. So I found that also an interesting watch.
Yeah, maybe the Twitter post by Sam Altman about their release schedule, because Sam Altman posted some sort of release planning on Twitter, or X, with a bit of the explanation how their schedule is going to look like. And he said that right now we have GPT 4.0, of course. They still plan to launch GPT 4.5, which has the same technology and way of working as GPT 4.0. And then afterwards, GPT-5, the next in line, is probably going to be a combination of these more, let's call them traditional large language models, and these new reasoning models we're discussing today.
Yeah. And all the reasoning models we have right now are basically evolvements of GPT.
Yeah, and I think it showed a difficulty which all the AI labs had to make these models smarter and smarter. They had to put in a lot of data. Each new version of a model was, I think, twice as expensive as the previous one. So I think GPT 4.5 is probably going to cost $600 million of training energy and data. And with these reasoning models, they can make the models smarter without just throwing extra data to it on it.
Yeah. Quite interesting.
Yeah.
And on that note, by the way, we also have Google, who's quite upset that OpenAI released Deep Research, which they already had for half a year or something. But they also released their new Gemini 2.0 Pro models, which I think are pretty competitive in terms of how fast they are, how intelligent they are. And of course, they also include the Google or the Google search grounding feature, which helps with outputting the correct answers or reducing hallucinations in these models. But they also released their flash thinking model, which is again also a reasoning model, but really, really affordable and quick and quite smart also in all the benchmarks. Can be used for coding as well. But maybe it's time then to dive a little bit into what a reasoning model is. How would you summarize that?
Well, I would say that it's just, it's maybe an understatement, but I think it's just a GPT 4.0 with several steps. So a normal large language model gets in the question or the assignment, runs a generation, so it generates an answer, and then checks this answer by itself to determine whether it's fulfilling the initial question or assignment. So it's more a multi-step process than with the more traditional models that just start generating an answer instantly.
Yeah, and I read the DeepSeek paper recently. DeepSeek is one of the open source models or providers that releases open source models to the market and then also accompanying it with a paper. And in one of their papers, they talked about reasoning models and how they did it. And basically, what they did, they prompted their own model, in this case, DeepSeek V3. Then it came back with an answer, but then they did another kind of training on top of the default training, which was reinforcement learning, which means you're going to check the output. And if you're rewarding or punishing the model for giving you a good or a bad answer in the first place, or a good or a bad branch it chose. And by doing this, you can really cheaply retrain your output to take the right steps during a reasoning process. So what you're doing is basically you first ask your question to a large language model, and that always includes make a plan. And then once that plan gets executed, that's the moment their engineers are rewarding this model to take the right steps. And this thing alone really accelerated how powerful or smart these models will become in the end, because in the end, it matters what the eventual conclusion you get from the model is the most important. And what is the most expensive is to create a first answer that's always good. So that's why training 4.5 is so expensive. You want the base model to become more intelligent, but why not train on the output the model is actually giving? And I think that's the big difference, that they found this effective and cheap way to replicate intelligence. And I also think about it in more or less the same way as we are trained, right? So if you do something stupid, you get hurt. And if you do something smart, you're more inclined to do it more often. So this is more or less reinforcement learning, I would say.
Yeah, and it's called test time compute, right? This.
Yeah, they do this during test time compute, which I think means you train your model and then you're testing the. Yeah, I don't know exactly what test time compute the definition means, but I think it's a little bit later or after training the initial model. Yeah, they have a layer on top of it.
Yeah.
That determines the paths the base model is taking.
Yeah, and based on your specific question, there's some final training done on the model to make this model optimized for your question, right?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, because when you ask a question, I don't know how to build the Eiffel Tower, then this process tunes this model to be customized for this specific question. How is this? Is this stored somewhere? Is this going to be lost when you ask a new question? Isn't it just moving the...
I think it moves all the output through the new layer. So they have already done all the reinforcement learning, and then you get your own unique model according to the reinforcement model that's on top of the base model.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm no AI researcher. I just make AI tools. But I think it's interesting when you have a look at the DeepSeek R1 research paper to see exactly how that works.
Yeah.
Now you're asking me these questions, and I think, okay, I need to do a deeper dive myself to be 100% on that.
Me too.
Yeah, but maybe we can talk a bit about what kind of use cases this unlocks for businesses, because that's what our specialty is, right?
Yeah.
Using all these big and expensive models with all the cutting edge technology and then implementing it in a specific process or system. So did we already see since these developments some practical uses of where we applied these reasoning models?
In our projects, you mean?
Yeah. Or where we see opportunities to do an implementation?
I think in every project where's a judgment phase, that's where reasoning becomes in handy to judge whether a document fulfills a specific set of requirements, or to judge, for example, damage on equipment. And then you need to judge the damage on this equipment based on pictures. Is this machine broken or not? Those steps can use more reasoning than just a one-shot answer like a normal large language model.
Yeah. So maybe a good example is another customer we have where we built this app that can scan pallets and alcohol bottles, or what? How do you say it?
Yeah,
for a logistics company, and they have a lot of people going around the warehouse to check all the attributes of these products, because these are bought by traders, and these traders really want to know what they bought before it's definitely stored somewhere in the warehouse. So these guys have 10 or 15 inspectors that are doing this on a daily basis. And they have to enter about 100 plus attributes of every shipment. And earlier last year, we built the first version of this tool. And then we used GPT-4o to determine the characteristics of each bottle. So is it refillable? Does it contain a picture with the pregnant woman on it and a cross over the pregnant woman, to be sure it complies with regulation, but also extract all kinds of texts from labels, etc. And we did this with the large language models because all these bottles look different, and we cannot train a machine learning model or a vision model to recognize a certain bottle, because we're dealing with tens or hundreds thousands of different types of products that look different. So then a Gen AI model is a perfect use case for this. But I think we can greatly increase the performance of hitting the right attributes for every product if we use a reasoning model, because then it can also combine all the factors a lot better, and then estimate better how it should fill in the gaps. So I think that's also an interesting example.
Yeah, and also a process where the speed of the response is not the most important characteristic of the solution.
Yeah.
Because these reasoning models take more time to generate an answer, because it's a multi-step approach. So, for example, in a chatbot interface, you probably not use a reasoning model, right? Because then it's too slow in.
Depends on the provider, right? That's also a problem other companies are solving. So I think you recently sent me a link from Cerebrus, and I sent you a link from Grok, which are both providers that specialize in generating output for large language models. And actually, the 4.0 model or the mini models cannot even compare in terms of speed with what they provide, even with reasoning models.
Yeah.
Which then results in us being able to implement even reasoning models in a chat kind of application if you use these providers. Of course, they have their own caveats, but yeah, I think it gets more and more interesting.
And maybe one question you also see in the news, you talked about DeepSeek.
Yeah.
And DeepSeek is one of the AI labs that develops large language models. They developed DeepSeek R1, which they released open source, but it's a Chinese company. Do you see any danger and any challenge there in terms of data, security, privacy?
Yeah, I think, first of all, they've shaken up the AI world in terms of what's possible with limited resources, because they are restricted from using the latest hardware to train their models or run their models, and they open source everything. So any researcher can look at the model and then see what it's doing. The model in itself, is a closed container. So you can just download it and run it on your own computer.
Yeah.
At least certain versions. So you have small versions that you can run on your computer, or bigger versions you can run in a data center. So that makes it totally isolated. So the first thing when people hear China and large language models, they think all their data is going to be captured by the Chinese government, and then they, either they have something to hide, or they're really worried company secrets get passed on to China, which I totally understand. So they provide two options actually with all the DeepSeek models, which is use their API. So then some of the data goes also to China. But if you host your own model, then it's totally isolated. So you're perfectly able to use it. So I was talking about Grok. They host their own version of the model, which is a US company, but you can also host it in Europe or even on your own servers. And it's not that resource intensive. So it's also not out of the possibilities to host your own model that way. If you would need to host the OpenAI models, for instance, that one is probably going way, way, way too big to put on only a few servers. So that's how I think about it. Some concerns, but there are solutions. Then maybe we should jump on to the next topic, which is called deep research. And then, and we'll start again, Koen. I'm giving you the difficult question. So if you would need to summarize deep research, which we briefly talked about before, what would that be? And I can show an example actually. Let me, if you explain what it is.
You can start with your example. I think it's a bit similar to what we discussed earlier about the reasoning models, because with Perplexity is some sort of AI research tool where you ask a question and then it starts searching the internet, finds content, and then answers your question. And now deep research is a new technology launched by Perplexity and also by OpenAI, which does the same process but then in multiple steps. So you, for example, ask a question, write a white paper about deep research, then it's probably first going to do some research to get the outline of the white paper, and then step by step it will do more research on each topic of this outline, finds content, and then starts answering your question, writing this white paper. So it's also a multi-step process where it can take up to, an hour, and does a lot of work in a relatively short amount of time.
And the funny thing is that OpenAI made this available under the €200 a month plan or $200 a month plan. But now Perplexity provides it for free. And why they provide it for free is because they also run this efficient R1 model from DeepSeek, which allows them to do multi-step reasoning and comprehensive research paired with their unique kind of search algorithm that can scrape the internet to get the latest information. So I put it on the screen right now. You can see how it works more or less. So you see it takes multiple steps.
Can you maybe zoom in a bit? Yes, thanks.
Yeah, so you see it understands it needs to find new information. So they're almost like Google Perplexity, where they index the internet and then can look up information instantaneously after you asked your question. And now you see it determines how many steps it needs to take. It takes multiple search queries. It uses more sources than the default kind of Perplexity way to answer things. And this is really a tool that specializes in doing research, actually. And as you can see, it's now already running for a while. So I started this 2 minutes ago. And you can also read up on the source it's using. And eventually you will get an answer. Here I have my, this is the answer I was getting this morning before we did this podcast. So I asked it to do a summary of everything between the beginning of this year and today. And then it came up with this quite comprehensive article or analysis report, which you can use, of course, for preparing things or researching things. So I would say it's also perfect for doing market research or things that require recent information and may take a while to get the answer for. So a daily summary of market conditions from a certain topic, or a daily summary of news, or whatever. That's one use I see.
Yeah, and isn't this one of the first publicly available agents? Because it's the reasoning approach with the step-by-step approach to answering your question or solving your problem.
Yeah.
And research on the internet is probably quite easy for OpenAI or for Perplexity to link to this way of thinking or reasoning.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine that you also have, for example, I don't know, an AI data analyst in your company. You can ask it simple questions and get an answer instantly. Or you can ask really deep, thorough analysis of data.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does the same process, right? Come up with a action plan, and then step by step get the data, analyze it, get more data, review.
Yeah.
I think in the future we will get more. It's called deep research, but then you have deep, I don't know,
Deep anything.
deep anything.
No, absolutely. I think, and that's also something Sam Altman talked about in one of the recent conferences, that right now you have all these separate products, and you can even, as a developer, can choose, okay, I want a model that does high reasoning or mid reasoning or low reasoning efforts, which of course costs different in terms of compute it requires. But his vision is that you just ask your question and the model decides on its own what it needs, goes off, and then comes back with the answer as fast as possible with the best answer possible. And I think that's really the future.
Yeah.
Where you don't even need to think about what kind of product you're going to use, right?
No, you still have your question or your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe to end with, I think this kind of technology from Perplexity is really powerful when you incorporate it also in your business processes. So when you have people inside your process or departments that are doing a lot of these research things, maybe weighing in on pitches you receive from startups to identifying market gaps for your sales team. I think if you have people or departments doing stuff like that in your company, it's a perfect time to have a look at what things like Perplexity can do for you. And certainly when you connect it with your existing systems, so with your CRM system or your ERP system, you can price research automatically. You can automate anything basically that now require a lot of people to monitor, if you're even doing it. So yeah, on that note, I think we should end the podcast here, and then hopefully do another one next week. But we're really, really busy, so we'll see if that's going to happen. But if we have enough inspiration and enough viewers, enough likes, we'll definitely do it. So I would say thanks everyone for watching, and see you next time.
Yeah. See you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Koen.